And good afternoon to everybody. It's really nice to be with you. I'd like to take us through the announcement of the annual Roger Mills Prize for Innovation in Learning and Teaching 2023. So the prize, which is sponsored by the University of London worldwide, is named in memory of Roger Mills, a long-standing and well-loved former fellow of the Centre for Online Distance Education and also Pro-Vice Chancellor of the Open University. Roger made a major contribution to the support of innovation in learning and teaching in the University of London through his contribution to projects and academic policy development. And this prize commemorates his contribution. I'm delighted that his daughter, Vicky Mills, who teaches at Birkbeck, is able to join us today for the presentation. So let me just tell you a little bit about the submission. 7 applications were received. One was the development of computational thinking skills on Codio learning platform on the MSc Computer Science program. And this was submitted by Larissa Grice on behalf of the team at Birkbeck and University of London. Then the next one was Making It Personal was the title. It was embedding the elements of lecturer's identity into module design as a method of student engagement. And this was submitted by Iranova Maria from Royal Holloway University of London. Then there was Enhancing Access by Distance Learning Students to Academic Content, Open Athens Single Sign-On, SSO, submitted by Sandra Turi, University of London. The next one was Team-Based Learning in Psychology, from Online to Hybrid Approaches, submitted by James Finden, Francesca Cotier, King's College London. Then Enabling Climate Action through Online Pedagogy, which was submitted by Tom Tanner from SOAS. Then there was Innovative Integration in the BSc Psychology, submitted by Anna Armstrong on behalf of the team at King's College and University of London. And then finally, Supporting Students through Learning Mentor Groups on the Infectious Diseases MSc program at LSHDM, London School of Hygiene and Tropical Medicine, submitted by Anita Skinner from London School of Hygiene and Tropical Medicine. On our judging panel included Code Fellows Samantha Ahern and Leonard Hu and myself. The panel was chaired by Dr. Linda Amran Cooper, Director of Academic Practice and Director of Code. The panel members were impressed by the quality of each of the applications. Each project clearly focused on enhancing student learning and reported on innovation in digital education and impact. The strengths that were demonstrated included teams taking a scholarly and rigorous approach to enhancement and utilizing digital approaches to student engagement. The range of activity undertaken was substantial and speaks to the innovation taking place right across the University of London Federation. So, drum roll, everybody. I am delighted to announce that for 2023, our winning application is Team-Based Learning in Psychology from Online to Hybrid Approaches, submitted by James Finden, Francesca Cotier, King's College London. So let me tell you a little bit about why we chose this one. As a panel, we noted that the application presented a compelling, helpful, and well-articulated entry. The judges were impressed by the entry's practical pedagogical reasoning and results. As team-based learning brings its own great potential and difficulties, this entry offers a strong example for others of how it can be used effectively. My thanks again to everybody for putting forward your application and for engaging with Code, and particularly thanks to James and Francesca. Congratulations, it was a powerful submission. I'm pleased that now they have an opportunity to share some of their prize-winning work with us.
Well, thank you, Mary, and thank you everybody at the University of London and everybody involved in the prize giving for it. It's quite an honour for us both. My name's James. This is Francesca beside me. We are both lecturers in psychology at King's College. Our predominant role is on our BSc on-campus program, but of course all on-campus programs were distance programs across the pandemic. So over the next 10-15 minutes, I'll give a little bit of a talk about team-based learning and what we did to turn that into an online and a hybrid approach. So as a brief outline and overview of what we'll talk about in the next 15 minutes, I'll just give some words about what TBL is. Quite a big pedagogy to kind of cram into 7 minutes worth of introduction, so bear with me, I might skip over some things. And I'll give examples of how we use that pre-pandemic. And then Francesca will come in and talk about how we adapted that for online delivery. We've adapted it for hybrid delivery as well, but with time in mind, we'll just talk about online delivery. So what is team-based learning? It is an active learning approach. So it's an active learning approach. So students are using course material in a way in which they're applying it to real-world problems and evaluating it, etc. It is an evidence-based pedagogy, so a lot of evidence that shows it's an effective way to teach. It's good for developing teamworking skills, and it's good at reducing attainment gaps as well. It's also a flipped classroom approach. So the main content delivery here happens outside of the classroom, for the classroom, and we use in-class time to apply that material to real-world scenarios. And TBL itself addresses some of the common concerns with a flipped classroom approach, in that how do we ensure that students actually go through that preparation material before they come to class? And how do we make best use of live class time? So there are 3 main phases of team-based learning, and I'll give examples of how we use this on campus. We have a preparation phase, which happens before the class. And then during the class session, we have a readiness assurance testing phase and an application exercises phase. So let's talk about the preparation phase first. Preparation phase, essentially this is content delivery, the content that we want our students to know before they come to the class and apply it. We had some online journals, some online readings, as well as in-class lectures. But this could be anything, and giving examples of what we did on campus before COVID. So that, very briefly, is the preparation phase. That all happens before people attend the class. Then in class, we have a readiness assurance testing phase and application exercises. And that readiness assurance phase is comprised of two main components: an individual test and a team test. And then we have those application exercises. So if we focus on the readiness assurance testing, first of all, the whole point of this is to ensure that students have gone through the preparation material and they come to class prepared with that knowledge that they can then engage with the application exercises. And we have an individual quiz that can be between 5 and 20 multiple choice questions. We do this as a closed book, timed, under exam conditions test, essentially. And the questions are designed to kind of target the lower level of Bloom's taxonomy, which is not appearing on the screen, but should be. There it is. So the remembering and the understanding levels. We then repeat that exact same quiz in teams. The students are working in small teams of about 5 to 6 people or so, and they do those exact same questions again, but they confer with each other on their answers. And they log their answers on scratch cards. And these scratch cards are called immediate feedback assessment technique scratch cards. The beauty of these is that when you scratch off the answer that you think it is, it will tell you immediately if you got it right or wrong by having one of these little stars underneath it. That's good because it gives students multiple opportunities to get to the right answer. So you get this really rich in-class discussion amongst these teams as they're trying to find out what the right answer is. If they're getting it wrong, they have another attempt to get it right. They can continue their conversation about what they think is the correct answer. So that's the readiness assurance protocol, that individual quiz, the team quiz. That happens at the beginning of class and takes about 30 to 40 minutes. This is ensuring that students understand the core concepts they then need to engage in the application exercises. So let's think about the application exercises. So in the application exercises, students are still in those small teams and they're working to solve problems, and these should be real world significant problems that require them to use that material that they learned in the preparation phase. We ensure that they had it in the readiness assurance phase. So this is more of the high levels of Bloom's taxonomy. It's application exercises, the questions that are based on creating, evaluating, analyzing, and applying. Now we tend to, in our in-class sessions, set about between 5 and 10 of these application exercises. They're short questions with multiple options. And when we put together those questions, a very helpful framework to think about is the 4S framework. And I'll walk through this with examples, or with a example of how we do this on campus. So you may not be able to read at the back, and I'm not going to read it out, but we have here an example of one of the TBL questions for application exercises that we have in clinical psychology. So our first of the 4 S's is that it has to be a significant problem. And in clinical psychology, a significant problem is that patients are sometimes reluctant to engage in challenging therapies. And that's what this question is really about. So we can tick that off. It is a significant problem. The next of the 4 S's is that it all has to be the same problem. And so the way that this would work in class is that all of the groups in the class at tables, ideally similar to how you're seated today, everybody's working on these same questions at the same time. So the question's on the board and all the groups are working on the same question. The third of the 4 S's is specific choice. So here, it's not an open-ended question. There are 4 possible options, A, B, C, or D, and we're asking students to confer on their groups and decide which of those 4 options they would select. So we can tick off specific choice. And lastly, the principal or simultaneous report. And here, after about 5 minutes of classroom discussion, the facilitator will say 3, 2, 1, and the groups will put up a flashcard with an answer corresponding to the options on the board. The beauty of this is that you as a facilitator are able to then generate a really rich in-class discussion. You can ask tables why is it that you put B and other tables may have put D, and you can generate lively classroom debates based upon their reporting to these questions. So this is how we used team-based learning before the pandemic. It's the traditional approach where we have that preparation phase that happens before students enter into the classroom. And then the first thing that they do in the class is the readiness assurance phase. So the individual quiz, followed by the team quiz, and then they move into those application exercises. So I will pass over now to Francesca, who will walk you through how we then converted all this to online delivery.
So when the pandemic hit in 2020, we obviously needed to start thinking about how exactly we could convert these online sessions to be appropriate for online use. So, sorry. So I was saying that when the pandemic hit, we needed to convert the TBL sessions that were originally designed for in-person to be appropriate for online use. So in doing this, we had 4 key challenges that we were keeping in mind. So the first was accessibility. So that is, we wanted to make sure that the resources and sessions were appropriate for both our students that are coming from all over the world, so different time zones, but also all of the students with different needs. Next, we needed to think about reworking the readiness assurance questions. So those were the MCQ questions that were done individually for open book conditions. So obviously online, it's harder to kind of have that closed book environment. So that was something we needed to think about. Then, and arguably most important, we really wanted to emulate the in-class group work experience. So that's something that always really attracted to us with TBL, is seeing those great in-group discussions. And we wanted to see that online as well, which we all know is challenging. And also just to maximize engagement. So another great thing about team-based learning is often you will see a much wider range of students engaging in the discussion than you normally would. So maybe those that are slightly shyer, etc. And I think that's partly to do with how structured the approach is. So now I'm just going to briefly talk you through the key changes that we made when converting it online. So firstly, in terms of preparation phase, we did what I think a lot of people have done, which is changing the in-person lectures to short online lectures. We did this by ensuring that they were 10 to 20 minutes long, because we know that that's the ideal time for students to stay engaged with these videos, and also keeping them very colorful, lots of different images, and basically as short and snappy as possible. Then arguably one of the bigger changes was moving the individual MCQ test, which was originally done in class, to be done before the session. So we know that students one, don't like sessions that are too long online, and especially one that crammed with activities. So we wanted to move that to be a pre-class activity. And as I mentioned before, we needed to turn that into an open book test. So we did that by implementing a 10-minute time limit on the tests, and also restructuring the questions so that they required the slightly higher levels of the Bloom's taxonomy, so application rather than simply remembering and understanding. And then finally, what we did was with the group activities. So the group MCQ test and the application exercises, these were done in breakout rooms that were facilitated by the session leader. So now I will quickly talk. Oh, you cannot see what I can see, but please soon you will. Okay, great. So I'm just going to show you basically what it looks like on our Moodle for you to kind of visualize. So as you can see here, the students had access to watch the video. So there was a link to that. And then the access to the reading. So in this case, it was the case study. So they all had individual case studies, and also the individual quiz that I mentioned before. So that all was the prep material that they needed to complete. Then we have the next section, which was focused on the live session. So the sessions were 2 hours long. And what we decided to do was to, convert the session into, divide the session into divide the session into 1 hour parts. So in the first hour, they would work on the team quiz and the application exercises. So with the team quiz, we also wanted to emulate that scratch card experience that James was showing you before. So that meant that we allowed students to have multiple attempts at the questions, but also they get penalized each time they get it wrong. So they're getting that immediate feedback. They're just not having the kind of fun scratchy part, but they still enjoyed it. And then they had the application exercises. Those were provided to them on PowerPoint slides. One student would share the PowerPoints, and then they would go through them together. And then we would have the session leader dropping in on the breakout rooms to make sure that they're having nice discussions, trying to help them where they're kind of, sometimes we have those quieter breakout rooms, so they're maybe spending a little bit more time and helping them to engage with the activities. So you can see we had all these links here that were manually set up, and then they would do their group exercises, and they would all join the whole group session, where the session leader would talk them through the application exercises. So they did the same thing of simultaneously responding with their letters, but we allowed them to use the chat for that. So that really encouraged more students to be speaking. So back to the challenges and how we address these. So the first, as I mentioned, was accessibility. So one thing we did was we provided transcripts for all of the videos so that they were as accessible as possible. We used accessible templates for the PowerPoint slides, again, to improve the accessibility. And we actually did not require any cameras or mics for this. And we actually found that that still worked really well. Even when the students were shyer and they were even using the chat function, they were still having really great engaging communication. Then in terms of reworking the questions for open book conditions, I mentioned before, we implemented the 10-minute limit and reformulated the questions to require application. And then emulating the in-class group work experience. So students were randomly allocated to groups, but they stayed in the same groups for all of the sessions so they become familiar with each other. We created virtual individual meeting spaces. So rather than using that, the automatic breakout room function, we created the manual link for them. And importantly, the session lead would always drop into the sessions to make sure that students are chatting and we don't have those problems, when no one's talking and everyone's left the breakout room. So to make sure that the conversations really are happening. And finally, in terms of engagement, we placed a lot of emphasis on creating a safe space. This was particularly important because we're talking about clinical psychology here. So, we're talking about more sensitive topics. We want everyone to feel as comfortable as possible. We used a lot of positive reinforcement. So sometimes, when maybe a student would be a little bit off with their answer, but we still try and give them some positive feedback, but also importantly, constructive feedback. So they feel that when they are contributing, they are getting useful advice and information back. And finally, effective questioning. So just really making sure that we're kind of asking the right questions. Okay, so how do we know that it worked or that it was successful? We did a short survey of all of our students, and we found a really positive result. They were 100% strongly agreed or somewhat agreed with the statements that we asked them. So basically about how engaging they found the workshop, etc. And we also found we had some really nice qualitative feedback. So they said that they found the sessions really engaging, that they were amazing, and yeah, generally just positive feedback. So we were really, really delighted to hear that. Maybe slightly more objective for the assessment that we had, we were hoping, to at least see that the grades were maintained, but we actually saw an improvement in the grades. So we were really delighted to see that. Obviously, that might be other circumstances as well, but something that we wanted to keep in mind in terms of evaluating it. Right. So when we got all this positive feedback, we felt quite optimistic about our new approach. So we decided to share it wider. So we have given a conference talk at the King's Education Conference. We also converted that video into a TED Talk, which is basically a King's TED Talk. And we've also created asynchronous training resources to be shared with GTAs that are interested in this approach, but also other colleagues that might be interested in implementing it. Going forward, we have a few things in mind. We are hoping to offer some in-person trainings at King's and hopefully beyond. And also I will be talking on a TBL panel in April, so lots of exciting things coming up. So just to finish off, if anyone is interested in this approach, some recommendations. So firstly, make sure that you take the time to develop the MCQ questions and application exercises because they're so central to, obviously, to the session. And once you get those right, it works really well. You do need a more experienced session lead. They are a little bit more complicated when it gets to discussing the application exercises. So I would really recommend that you have a module lead that's kind of, postdoctoral level or beyond. Use videos to bring the prep to life. So try and make those videos as catchy and as exciting as possible. And consider your group allocations carefully. This is something that we need to work on as well, but just consider how you make up the groups to kind of ensure maximum engagement. Right, I think that is it from us. So thank you so much. And if you have any questions, feel free to ask them.
Well done. Well done. It was a really good application. I think the panel who were here would agree. It was a really rich application, really inspiring. And also reading the application, I could see how I could apply it in my classroom, which was really, really good, very transferable. Are there any questions online or in person? Yep.
Well, I'm afraid this is a question to comment. I will come and talk to you afterwards because I am also speaking at TBL. I've also tried to put it out of this. So I'm really interested.
We saw you in Bradford.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
So really interested in all of that. Fantastic what you're doing. And just for everyone else, if anyone else.
So for the online audience, that was an endorsement of TBL and a discussion is going to continue about from practitioners. Any other comments or questions? Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I love this. I've looked at it before, but I've never had the opportunity all the time to get to grips with it. And then lockdown came and we were doing other things. Are there karaoke time?
Oh no, not again.
No, are there pragmatic considerations which we get in the way? So you say that you have groups of students. So what's the typical size within a lecture? And are you in a flat room or in a tiered lecture theatre? Because I just anticipate that either or both of those could be challenges.
Massive challenges. We're working at King's where TBL is not a very common pedagogy at all. Other universities where it's been accepted by policy, and I'm thinking Bradford as an example and others, the space is purposely created for TBL sessions. And you would want a space quite similar to this room, really, where you have separate tables with about 5 or 6 chairs around them, because those are the sizes of your groups. Sometimes at KCL we have to make do with what we've got, which has made some sort of inventive ways of doing it around lecture theatres and stuff like this, which is not ideal, but it does still work. So I think, you know, it's sort of that phase of perfection is the enemy of the good, right? If you're aiming for it to be absolutely perfect, you'll just never get started. And you always think of a million reasons why this won't quite work with the space that we've got, with the students that we've got, with the course that we've got. But actually, if you just get going with it, you'll make mistakes along the way, you'll have these problems, but you can get there and it is successful.
And just to find out about the size, what's the maximum number of a cohort that you have in the room?
Probably about 60.
60, yeah.
Yeah, ours is approximately 60 as an upper limit. We've had smaller classes now, about 20, 25. This is the first year of my third year module when I scaled it up to 60 instead of having 2 classes of 30. How do I do in a room with all of them? And it worked very, very well. It is reasonably scalable. There might be other comments from the audience about how scalable it can get to.
300. But when you get into the hundreds, does it become challenging? But presumably you've dealt with up to 300 there, and it works. That's interesting. Thank you. You're working well as a team in your team-based approach.
One last question, because we do need to go on to our next panel. We're already running a little bit late. It's okay. No, it sounds. It is absolutely.
I don't know anything negative, but I just wonder what you do if the students don't meet the threshold of it with the preliminary task, when you have some sort of way of helping them catch up, or do you just let them help the group help them sail through?
Yeah, I mean, part of the reason for that two-phase readiness assurance phase, or two-stage readiness assurance phase, you have that individual quiz, which you're right, quite a lot of students, maybe not quite a lot of them, but you do get some that would be underneath a fail grade for them. You then have that opportunity to go through those same questions as a group. You've got 5 other people or so in that group. Chances are one of them's got the right answer and can tell you why. So you have this really nice peer learning that's going on in that team phase, and that's exactly what it's designed for. No students, we can't expect every student to come, you know, with 100% answers, but through those group quizzes, you get closer to that. So, you know, we haven't shown the data here, but of course, what you can do is have a look at the individual grades and then their team grades. And it's not surprising the team grades are much higher, right? Because they've got the collective wisdom of everybody in the team. So that is the way in which team-based learning helps to ensure that.
I want to add one thing, and also when they do the group tests, if we find that there's certain questions that they're still struggling with, we then provide clarification on those questions to the whole group before we move on to the application exercises, so that everyone's on the same level.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
So I think you can see why we selected that team-based approach, because of the real focus on supporting positive student outcomes and how helpful those types of skills, that idea that as an individual your test score might be quite low, but as part of a team your test score is so good.